The art of pressing a vinyl record. It is just that. It is an art form. It is a craft. And I had the pleasure of speaking with Dustin Blocker, owner of Hand Drawn Pressing here in Dallas, Texas. We're going to talk about quality control. We're going to talk about prices. We're going to talk about how over 100 different people have to actually touch the record before it ends up on your turntable. We're going to discuss the current state of the vinyl industry on this episode of Talking About Records. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl, a small chain of independent record shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If you're not local, but you are in the U.S., you can always shop online at ntxvinyl.com, and would love it if you'd subscribe to our channel here on YouTube and follow us across social media at NTX Vinyl is the handle on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. This is a really cool episode because I actually have a guest, and there's nothing more fun than actually conversing with someone than sitting here just talking to the camera. Dustin Blocker, owner of Hand Drawn Pressing. He's a friend at this point, which is awesome. He's also a partner because I actually use Hand Drawn Pressing with my label. Me and my buddies send a bunch of work his way and have always been happy with what they've done. He's been doing this for 10 years. He's not new to us, and he dove in sight unseen to figure out this industry, and it's been fascinating to watch the business they've built. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. Here it is, my chat with Dustin Blocker from Hand Drawn Pressing.
Dustin, how are you, my friend?
Good. How you doing? Good to see you again.
Doing well. You braving the Texas summer, staying cool?
No,
It's
super hot.
impossible.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Really?
No, it's all good. The air conditioning still works, so we're still okay as long as that happens.
No, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking a few minutes with me today. We've talked plenty in the past, and done a bunch of work together in the past. My record label, DFW Legacy Series, that I've got with a couple buddies here in town. We send you guys a bunch of work, and I've always been super happy with the work you guys do. So it's cool to be able to touch base and talk shop a little bit, which I think is the idea here.
Absolutely.
So let's kick off, just so people know a little bit of context as far as who you are and who Hand Drawn Pressing is. Give us a little history. I know you guys were founded in 2014, which is awesome because this is not a new thing. You know, you're coming up on 10 years doing this, which is amazing. So give us a little bit of that initial vision in 2014 when you decided to take the leap and open a pressing plant.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So the tape rewinds a little bit farther actually to 2011. So I started the record label, which is Hand Drawn Records, in 11.
Sure.
And those first few years were kind of doing compilations, a lot of shows with South by Southwest. Eventually, even did some stuff with the Grammys, the Texas chapter in Dallas. And it kind of, the label grew pretty quickly. Started winning awards with like Dallas Observer and Fourth Weekly.
Sure.
Artists started getting stuff. So that was kind of the early genesis. And then I was working at a corporation at the same time that I started the label in 2011, and found my now business partner, Alex. We were literally at this corporation in the lunchroom, is the best way to put it. And he was like, "Hey, you're in the music business?" Like, yeah. And he knew I was a singer in the band, which I had about 17 years as a lead singer in Exit 380, which was originally started in Denton, Texas, at North Texas. And then what ended up happening, I said, yeah, but there's going to be some money in vinyl, because he was asking if there's actually any business opportunities. And I couldn't tell you exactly how I came upon that. Only that my band, we had been together so long, I was challenging them to record in a different way. So when we had started the band in the year 1999, literally, which seems like a long time ago, which I guess it is a long time ago.
Yeah, it is.
We were like a rock band, right? Well, we were a bar band, then we were a rock band, and kind of a heavier rock band. And then as we got a little bit older, came more Americana, folk-driven kind of stuff.
Sure.
So that led to our last recording, which was our 8th studio album, which was in the year 2014. When I said, "Hey guys, we should do the format vinyl where we can go back and go rock album side A, side B we'll do our acoustic folky kind of stuff." And that was why. That was the why behind it. And so then when I wanted to make the record or manufacture it, finding a plant in the States,
Yeah.
it was literally impossible. And then figuring out how much it cost or what a lacquer was or what cutting meant or
Big learning
packaging. I mean,
curve.
no idea what anybody was talking about. And then we got the records and the quality was fine and it was made overseas. And but the packaging wasn't great. And so we kind of had to think through all that stuff. And so I think what ended up happening is when Alex talked to me and said, "Hey, so is there any money?" I just thought the opportunity's got to be in vinyl because this system is wildly broken,
There you
and
go.
it's something that I want, right?
Most of
On
the
a
time, the
personal
way to
level.
kick off is to find a problem and then solve it.
That's it. That's it. So it wasn't some fancy thing of a bunch of people sitting around a table, right? Kind of. It was the standard music business. Hey, this thing is not cool, man. Let's make it cool, man. You
Try
know.
and fix it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so 14 was so we kind of went through some iterations of what's that mean and what's it mean for Hand Drawn Records, the label, and what is vinyl? Is that what we really want to do? And so we started brokering to a lot of the bands that your label kind of works with now because those were a lot of them were my old buddies. We played on the road together and whatever.
Sure.
And there was a local plant in town at the time, A&R Records, which was owned by Stan Getz, and that had been around since literally the 1960s. And we would do some work with him, and that was how our first year plus was. And then
Nice.
16 was us building out our existing plant that we're in now,
Yeah.
and putting in the newest record press, newest record presses in the world in January of 2017. That's your short
So
story. Short, long
so
story.
17. So if I'm thinking about a timeline, so then you've got about a good 3 years of when vinyl was what I consider to be catching on. Like that's when
Yeah.
that period there from 17 to 20, which obviously brings us up to COVID, we'll get to next, was a very fruitful period. I mean, that's when I started NTX Vinyl, more or less, even if it was just behind the scenes stuff. I was starting to think business wise, been collecting my whole life, but I'm like, was really getting into it and starting to think that way. So correct me if I'm wrong, but momentum was really strong from 17 going right up to COVID. Then we hit COVID, everything hits the fan and everyone's scrambling. So talk to me just a little bit about, because again, I want to get into kind of current state of things versus
Yeah,
harping
yeah,
on COVID, but
yeah.
talk to me a little bit about the challenges going through COVID and then pretty much how you guys transitioned out of that, which obviously is just probably in the last year, really, or still making that transition. I'd love to hear just a little slice of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, so 17, 18, 19 was really growing the business. We were growing about 30+% each year, which is crazy
Yeah.
already. But we were, the first year was exceptionally challenging. So I'd noted earlier they're the first record presses on the planet that had been made since 1981. And here we are in 2017 with technology that it was basically we're working on production models and the company that made them, we were starting to know how to run them better than they knew, and things were breaking all the time, and it was super difficult. So those first year and a half was just us really working through how to make good records and
Logistics.
make them
Yeah.
consistently. And then and so then we get into night. By the time we hit 19, we were really kind of catching our stride. And
Perfect
then
timing.
COVID, the lights go doom, right?
Yeah.
Um, thankfully, we were able to stay open during that time period. I mean, we closed for literally 1 week during the whole COVID time period. And we kind of eat through business that first, I think COVID really, they turned everything off in like March,
Yeah.
April
March
of that
2020. Yeah.
year. By June, we were going, uh-oh, the business was starting to drop off so heavy. What was going to
Mhm.
happen? And we had an influx of jobs from one big customer that kind of kept us open in June into the July. And then it was like magic. In August of that year, it started ramping up. And then the
Mhm.
dial kept going and dial kept going. Into the next year, it started getting even crazier. August of, no, what year is this? I guess it was August of 22. It was so wildly explosive
So a
for
year ago.
everybody. Yeah, a
Yeah.
year ago. Everybody's booked 8, 9 months out.
Yeah.
And we're just turning away more business than we were taking in. And it was
Yep.
it was it was awesome, but at the same time it was maddening because we were just turning away so much business.
Yep.
And we had ordered new presses to double up our production capacity. and they were 18 months late because of the COVID thing. So it was like a perfect storm of, we really want to grow. Here's this crazy thing that's happening. We literally can only make this many records during this time period. And we started running 24 hours a day, and we did that for 28 months, and we just now caught up 3 weeks ago. So
Wow.
28 months, we ran around the clock, 24 hours a day. You can imagine how many people you need for that, how
Yeah.
how many things you break overnight and during the day, and how many people you have to have fix them. And so just a crazy time period, and we doubled capacity. So we've like quadrupled the company. We're at 35 employees currently, and
I was just gonna ask.
we're good with where we're at now.
You good stay.
We're good. We're
So
good.
35 employees. You're not running 24/7 again, but so give me some numbers like for people to understand like
Sure.
how many records can you guys press in a day, or like what would the barometer be?
Yeah. So running 24 hours a day, 90 at with 4 lines, which is what we have now. It's
Four
a
presses.
little under 10,000 records a day.
10,000
Um,
records a day.
yep, and we are wildly known as kind of the highest yield for the amount of things that we have. So we
Mhm.
just, we're really efficient, streamlined, trying to be real tight with everything we
And
do.
what is a normal job? Like I know our jobs we do because we're in a little niche label, but what's a normal press for you guys? Is it 1,000 records? Is it 5,000 records? Like a project?
Yeah. So last year it grew to, I think the average order was a little over 2,000 units per
Okay.
order. This year, I mean, we'll do. It sounds crazy. So we did 400 and a little over 400 projects last year, like titles, right?
Mhm.
Actual albums. This year we'll do 900. So just put your head around how many people you have to talk to every day to make that happen. So
We'll
it's
get to that when I
it's a
want to talk
lot.
to you about your day to day
Yeah.
because that's what I assumed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. So there's a
Wow.
preemptive
Okay.
answer on that.
That's that's a
So
lot of records. That's
there's a lot
awesome.
of records. So so last year we actually did 1.4 million records. This year we'll do about 1.8. So that's
So
the.
still good growth. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
That's
great.
awesome.
It's great.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay. So current state of the vinyl industry. This is the most interesting topic for me. Obviously, I have a lens coming at it from a couple angles, label owner a little bit, but we've got, small label, mainly retail, because I'm seeing on a weekly basis as I buy new vinyl, the shifts and the peaks and valleys of things that are going on. So I'm wondering from your perspective, as it comes to production, supply, demand, turn times and all those, like what is the current state? If someone wants to get a record press, how long is it going to take? Can they expect to pay the same thing they were paying pre-COVID, or are prices still up high? Like I'm curious what all that looks like as things are again kind of normalizing.
Yeah. So first thing on the timeline, yeah. So us as a plant, this is pretty kosher to across what we've heard from all our brothers and sister plants and all that. 12 weeks is pretty much the barometer that we're all able to hit again, which is amazing.
Yeah.
If everything's dialed up and perfect, and a quote gets sent out, the client says, "Yes, I want this many records. This is exactly what I want. Here's all my art files. Here's all my audio, ready to go." I mean, 8 weeks is the absolute minimum time
Sure.
needed to make that happen. And it's a pretty straightforward process. It comes in, it has to be sent out to get cut and plated, which is the audio side of it. And then the
Mhm.
printers are actually typically the slowest. They're still about 6 weeks minimum to
So
get like a jacket to us to be able to pack
yeah,
them.
so just so people know, or maybe you can tell me, but I think most record pressing plants don't do their own printing as well. I'm sure there
Nope.
are some that have in house, but it's pretty norm that you guys got to outsource all of the jackets, all of the inserts, all that type of stuff. You deal with the actual LPs themselves, and then you do assembly, but not the
That's right.
printing piece, and that's pretty
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah. So pretty standard in general is this. The cutting typically does not happen at any plant ever.
Yeah.
Almost always the cutting engineer is some offsite person or an
Hmm.
offsite company that has a cutting lathe that literally takes the digital files or tape files, mainly digital, and it gets sent
Yep.
to from a plant. They're a preferred partner. They cut it and send it to what's called a plating facility. So electroplating is how we finally get the things that we need. They make a mother off that lacquer, which is the thing that can be duplicated,
Yep.
onto what's called a stamper, and then we are stamping the hot plastic with the audio.
Yep.
So at the plant level, we have to have a cutting engineer and a plating partner to get us what we need in a format that we can actually duplicate the records. So that is sometimes the only common thing is a lot of plants have plating that are in their four walls, only because they can then once you make a record, you can make about 1,000 records off of one stamper
Off of one
set.
stamper.
Anything on that, you need multiple sets, and so
Mhm.
for timing wise, and for basically, if you have any kind of things that break or you damage a stamper, you can make another one. They'll
Helps
do plating
streamline
in
it. Yeah.
house. That's right. But then on the other side, the printing, literally nobody does it in house. There are four printers in the U.S. Or in the North America, and two of them are massive. And
Mhm.
the volume, just with the amount of print paper it would need, and the machines you'd need, and
It's a whole other
the
business.
complication of folding and gluing, which is the whole thing with the jacket,
Yeah.
is just crazy complex and expensive. So no, nobody does printing in house.
Yeah, I
Not in the
didn't
states.
figure so. Yeah, I didn't figure so. Okay. So talk to me. You said you guys are up to 35 employees. Talk to me a little bit about quality control, because as a retailer, as a store owner, I can tell you from the feedback I get from customers is that's always the thing people are concerned about, bitching about, emailing about is, hey, my record's warped. Hey, there's debris on the record, like all those types of things. And of course, during COVID, demand was insane. The workforce was lower than it should have been. And so that was the obvious, I don't want to call an excuse, but it was the obvious reason, which made logical sense is, hey, plants are understaffed and they're overwhelmed with work. And so you got to hope once that levels off, which now it is, that quality control, and I'm not just speaking about hand drawn, of course, I'm talking about industry wide, becomes something that is hopefully less of an issue. I would love your point of view on that, because I know that's a topic that a lot of vinyl nerds out there who are buying new records are really top of mind for them.
Yeah, so hopefully on the quality side, I mean, the reason we're having this conversation, you led with at the front that, jobs that you've had with us, you've been happy with. And
Sure.
I feel like that's two components: quality and communication. So
Sure.
we at the plant level, quality is key. We as a plant spend of those 35, more than half of them, literally all they're doing is quality control in one form or the other. And I can break out what that means. So we are then more expensive than some of these plants that might be pushing things out very, very quickly. To
Sure.
that, those are basically the huge major plants that are trying to get as many widgets out the door as possible.
Yeah.
And then quality is going to be, of course, an issue because you have as many turnover laborers that you can, just getting as much stuff out the door. So we, as a smaller plant, or on kind of the medium size, what
Hmm.
we do is spend an exorbitant amount of time on checking records by hand, visually and audibly. So we have two full teams. That's all they do around the clock. So we have our press technicians that are literally responsible for making the presses run. Is this the correct side? Is this the correct label that goes with it? Are there any pops and ticks and kind of big things that are going to cause issues,
Hmm.
and or things that are going to cause warping or stitching, or the edges not to be trimmed correctly, or a center label to be misaligned? On top of that, we have a quality control team that works literally beside them and walks around in literally a circle, press to press to press all day long, and checks behind them, right? So it's not just beholden to the one guy who, oh, he
It's
had to
not
take a
one
break, or
person. Yeah.
yeah, or I thought this sounded really good. It's a two key, right? I thought it sounded really good as a press technician, and me as the QC technician has to agree or job stops. So that's
Makes sense.
wildly important, right?
Yeah.
And they are listening together. And I have a point of view, he has a point of view. So it's not so subjective, right? And then the second piece of that is, now they've been made, everybody's happy, multiple, like we talked about earlier, thousands have been made daily. They then go to the packing queue, and then the packing queue visually inspects each one at a time. Boom, boom, it's good. Okay. And they're wearing, gloves and all that.
Yeah.
Then it goes into the sleeve that's either printed or supplied by us, which is when we get to choose to not have debris, by the way, is a polyline, so that
Polylined.
it's
It's
got
key.
polylined in between the paper. If you don't pay for the polyline, which is like 8 cents more, will you have debris? Yes, it is literally impossible to not have
Paper.
debris on a black record, because it is a scratchy paper sleeve that the
Yeah.
record's going into. It's going to leave residue, and your record's going to have little streaks on it.
Yep.
And I don't know what to tell you except for stop using them. And I'd
Yeah.
rather we never used them again.
We need to
But
convey that to everyone everywhere, because
of course, it's
it
crazy.
amazes me when I still open a record to this day, and it's, again, $40 record from a big artist.
Yes.
And I'm like, "Really?
And they
You
spend
just
a
went with the
double
paper sleeve?"
gatefold and the
Yeah, oh, yeah, it's
aqueous
all the artwork,
finish. And yeah,
looks beautiful, spent all this money, and I'm like, "But it's a paper sleeve."
it
It's
drives us
so
crazy.
confusing.
So we
Yeah.
do some pretty big stuff here, as well as tons of artists that nobody's ever heard of course. And the guess who doesn't spend the money? The massive artists. They don't. It's just
That's
it's
in
paper
my
sleeve.
experience, it's the same. It still
It's
surprises
brutal.
me, but I'm like, "Alright."
It's brutal. And let's say, and when they print the sleeve, so it's a printed sleeve and the printed jacket, of course.
Mhm.
I'm like, yes, there we go. So the printed sleeves don't scratch, and
Yeah.
they're awesome.
Yeah, because 'cause they're more slick. It's not the coarse
Yeah,
paper. Well, and
exactly.
I imagine with the bigger artists, bigger labels, the numbers are bigger, so they're pinching pennies, and they're
Yep,
going, "Or we're gonna press, 15,000 of these, so 8 cents, saving 8 cents on 15,000 records times 2, it's a double LPs, that's
that's right.
30,000.
Yep, that's
That's
right.
what it comes down to.
You got it. You're right on. Yep.
Yeah,
And then on the price side, as
yeah, of
far as price fluctuation, so I can only speak for us at the plant level. Our
course.
prices have not gone up or gone down, so we've been able to
You
stay
guys
with
have
where we
stayed.
are.
Oh,
Yes, it's
that's
been nice.
interesting. That's
Yep.
interesting. The price thing's tough, man. I mean, I hear it every day, and I'm hearing it more and more. Of course, we're in this stage now. Again, speaking as a retailer, where so many people started collecting during COVID. They either started net new or they restarted, meaning maybe they had a few records, but they didn't really listen much. But then they were stuck at home for all this time, so it
Right.
energized them to get involved with the hobby. All these people, huge influx into the hobby. It created an incredible amount of FOMO and just this boom around what we do, which I'm thankful for. It was amazing to watch. But the reality is now a lot of these people are back at the office. They're not at home. They're not spending as much time at the record, so they're not buying quite as many, or they're kind of leveled off that. And we could get into the discussion around the economy is kind of obviously the elephant in the room. We know all that situation. So
Right.
all that being said, I can tell you from customers of mine that they used to be able to walk into a record store with $100 bill, and if we're talking about new records, obviously, they could easily walk out with 3, 4, 5 records. And now you walk into a record store with $100 bill, and you're lucky if you're walking out with 2 or 3. Because the price, the retail MSRP of a single LP has gone up to 25, $30, and double
Right.
LPs, you're talking $40, $45. So it'll be real interesting. And if you have a point of view, I'm all ears, but I know you're coming from the production side, and there's a lot of different legs to this. Not only on the manufacturing side, but on the label side and on the retail side as well. And so it'll be interesting, again, from a retailer's point of view, to see if things fluctuate back down, from an MSRP standpoint, that to get to a point where customers are a little more comfortable with walking in and spending money, because a single LP is not, $30, $35, because it wasn't that way pre-COVID. And the people who were around pre-COVID know that. Like, that's the key. If you just started collecting 6 months ago, records were always expensive.
Right. Right. Right.
But there's all these people who've been collecting for a long time who are going, man, this is crazy. And so that's probably the number one topic as far as new releases, pre-orders, reissues, and things like that, which is what we're talking about on
Sure.
that price point thing. I'm basically watching from afar and telling people, hey, we're at the mercy, for the most part, of the one stops and the distributors, because you know it's not like prices are just going up on MSRP; they're going up on wholesale too. Which is why you have
Right.
to charge more. And so it's a sticky situation, and it's going to be interesting, I think, as we talk about the current state of the vinyl industry. I think it's a big lever over the next year or two. We're going to have to see what happens, because a lot of people just aren't going to be able to afford it anymore, is the
Y-
reality of it.
Yeah. So on the manufacturing side, as far as getting squeezed, right? So we're the ones that we're well, let me put it this way. We don't have any dog in the fight of as far as when it gets to the end consumer, right? So we've
Sure.
been charging what, like I said, for
Yeah.
5 years, whatever it is. What year is this? I don't know where are we
23.
right now? Yeah, 23. Okay. So we've been charging that same amount virtually since inception.
Hmm.
I think the only up and down was within shipping costs, right?
Sure.
Shipping costs rise, and then we pass those on to
Yeah,
our
you have to.
customer, which is the label of the artist. Now, when it gets to the distribution center, so we don't hold any product on the floor. We make it, we pack it, it ships back out, and most of it goes to distro or it's local pickup for local artists, things like that.
Hmm.
Um, and once it gets to what are the points for the distributor, what are the points for the wholesaler, I believe that they've just pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, and they want to see what the breaking point of the consumer is, and then
Yeah,
they'll back it back down. That's my that's my only thought,
that's
because
my only hope
uh,
too.
us as a plant, at a plant level, and every plant I know, the prices we don't charge more than we did 5 years ago. So
Interesting.
the for it going up, it's we're not taking more now. Maybe our artists get more points off of it than they used to.
Sure.
Maybe I don't know what the artist deals look like, especially as those artists are larger and tour and
Yeah.
um,
Well, and you got to
or
think
maybe
too.
they just moving around the country. They found it was more expensive, and they said, "Well, you got to start charging more." I don't know.
Well, that and I'm sure the other component that took place over the course of the entire 2+ years of COVID is artists couldn't make any money on the road. And so they're trying to figure out ways to squeeze money out to make a living.
Of
And so it
course,
would make sense. Now I don't know if I could say the same for labels. I guess so. But yeah, it's gotten to that point. Even you said the right words, breaking point is I'm curious how much further it'll get pushed. And there are outliers of artists who are back to try and charging $20 or $22. But then there's also the other side of the spectrum where artists come out and they're like, oh, it's $50 LP now. I'm like, oh my God, this is just crazy. And I know, and I'm not talking about like a audiophile label type stuff, just a
yeah, right,
normal
right.
record,
A
you
normal
know.
record, right, right.
So it's
Yeah,
it's
so
it's
we'll
been
see. But
interesting.
and the resale market is a whole nother
Oh
bear.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Okay. Talk us through a little bit. This is actually something I'm very interested in. What's your day to day like at a pressing plant as an owner of a pressing plant? Like, who are the people other than your employees? Obviously, if you own any company, you're managing employees, obviously. But
sure.
beyond managing your own staff, what else do you do? What does it look like manage your own staff, and then what does it look like from a day-to-day perspective dealing with your partners and dealing with whoever you may deal with? I would find that very interesting, and maybe the viewers will too.
Yeah, sure. So I was mentioning a little bit earlier of the growth of the company, and the only way to really grow was to not try to wear as many hats and really, get some folks in here that could manage other folks so that I could
Yep.
sleep at night and my business partner could sleep at night, right? So that was a big thing that we did. We kind of structured, so we have pre-production, production, and post-production. So pre-production is primarily where I live. Pre-production meaning, we have one sales guy, we have one project manager. We just got another one that's about to start up, and that's dealing literally with all the customer side, all the emails, all the inflow of assets. This is what you said you wanted on the quote. Is that really what you wanted?
Sure.
Give me the stuff to make your stuff happen. All that timelines, all the way through the production cycle, all the way through shipping it, and it's off, it's out the door, and we're good. So that is, I literally live mostly in the pre-production side. Then the
Okay.
production, of course, making the records. Post-production is the packing of the records, the QC side, packing back out the door, and then shipping's the end of it. So I touch all those pieces as the owner, but I live mainly in the pre-production. But yeah, thankfully we have a plant manager now. We have a post-production manager, pre-production manager, production manager, and then underneath all of them, depending on the shifts, we have shift leads. And then underneath the shift leads are the folks that work alongside the shift leads to actually make the product, pack the records, all that kind of stuff.
Is
So
no, it's
we
that's
try to
fascinating.
be well structured, again, and just kind of loosen control in different areas, and really always give the vision of how we started, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and
Yeah.
really live in that why. And we said it earlier, it's these are, or I didn't say it earlier, but these artists, pour, and I'm from the artist side, so we
Yeah.
pour so much into it. Um, you know, creatively, all the work and all the sweat and the crazy nights staying up and recording and doing all these perfect things to try to get with the record producer or the engineer and everybody make this great thing, and then for it to come to us who are trying to not recreate it, but just duplicate that out
Yeah.
into the world and make it worthy of $35. We have to really go above and beyond to really try to make a superior product to
Yeah.
not other plants, but just to superior to what even maybe the artist thought it could be,
Hmm.
right? Because once they are excited about what they have in their hands, guess what? They're going to be able to sell it into their fans and all these people that waited for it
Totally.
on the pre-sale,
To trickle
and
down. Yeah.
so yeah, that's really where we live, is in that why as a company. Like, we have to be interested and excited and listen to these records, whether we agree with them or not, whether we like them or not. It does not matter. We have to be agnostic of all that, and take each one super serious and take each one at a time. And that's a lot of labor and a lot of labor of love sometimes too. So but yeah, my day to day is living mainly in that pre-production side. Lots of customers, and then I said it earlier with the quality. The other one is communication. So
Mm.
us being able to speak to the customers frankly, if something's not going right on the timeline,
Yeah.
if there was an issue on a test press and it didn't get approved, how do we resolve it? How do we make sure there's an action and not just, yeah, it sounded like that, or we're
Sure.
not going to respond, which is literally some plants, been known to be like that. So that's kind of where we are, and where I am personally too, is just really just keep taking that mantle and pushing it forward, and keeping it at the highest quality possible day after day.
Well, it's cool to hear, man. And you said the phrase labor of love, which I use it all the time. And it's amazing to me, having now been on the business side of this and on the retail side of this. And obviously I've been on the artist side too. And now I'm on the label side. So I've kind of I've worn and am wearing a lot of those different hats. And it's crazy, all the way from obviously the artist, but then through the entire chain of everything you just described on the manufacturing side. I can't really speak for distribution side, although I deal with enough people around there to where I know that, they're in it for a lot of the right reasons too. And then
Sure.
all the way to the consumer side, when they actually get the record and listen to it, there are so many things that can go wrong in that entire process. And that's, I think, what a lot of people take for granted, is
Yeah.
how many people are involved in this process to bring a record. It's so different than recording something and getting it up on Spotify. Like,
Yeah.
there is,
Woo.
I mean, it is an entire world, an entire web, an entire industry of people like yourself who are passionate about what they do. And that's the only reason any of it works. Like,
That's right.
because no one's correct me if I'm wrong, but no one's getting filthy stinking rich off of all of this. Like, we're all
Exactly
here
right.
because we love it on some level, and we want to stay involved with music, which is what, and when it boils down to it, is why we're here. And
That's
so
right.
it's refreshing to hear it from someone on the manufacturing side, because I feel it on the retail side, and I know it's there on the customer side, the artist side. So it's like, it's a real thing, that labor of love thing. You got to really want it to be able to do this stuff.
Yeah, so to quantify that, the best one, so Welcome to 1979 is a studio in Nashville that we use for a lot of cutting and plating.
Hmm.
And I've heard some pretty great presentations by Chris Mara, who owns it. Um, and he tried to quantify it, and I think I'm probably misquoting the number, but I believe it was either 120 to 130 touches. So
Yeah,
120 to 130 times from the time the recording button has been finished, right, and it's been and it goes to mastering, and all these people do these things, and the cutting, the plating, and get it to the plant. The plant gets made, and then it gets on a shelf wherever it gets picked up. 130 different ways for it to go wrong before you even picked it up to see if the shrink wrap was still on it or torn up by somebody at Walmart, right?
it's a lot of
Um,
steps.
that's a lot of steps and a lot of people. And the supply chain side, it's pretty cool. So going back right before COVID again, so the Vinyl Record Manufacturing Association, which I started along with a couple other folks back in December of 19, was actually birthed out of a conference. But the idea was to get all of us on the plant level the PVC suppliers, the corrugate suppliers, the
Hmm.
printers themselves, the cutting people, the
All
plating
those
people,
130
the
people.
record label. You got it. In a room saying, here are the things that are the price points are too high. The quality control isn't
Yeah.
where it should be. Why are things warping? What kind of boxes can we use differently? What
Mhm.
kind of standards should we be using to send things to distribution so it doesn't cost them more to unwrap it and then pass that cost on to the wholesale, and
Yeah.
wholesale passes that on to the customer? What can we do to mitigate some of those things and get the prices to where they should be and get the quality to where it should be, and just communicate at a, not at a competition level, but a, hey, we are in this together level. And so that is,
So
kind
this
of that
this
vision
this
that
VRMA is
started a few
some.
years ago. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the VRMA is something that you were involved with founding, right?
That's right. Yeah. So the Making Vinyl conference is a conference that I think this last year in Minneapolis there was 300 something folks attending. Maybe it's
Okay.
400. It was the biggest one so far. Back in 2019, it was in Hollywood, and what happened was basically you have these panels, just like any conference,
Hmm.
panels of people sitting on stage saying, "Here's here's where they live in the vinyl side of it. Here's what
Hmm.
they do. Here's how cool it is." And what I found was that the panels were fine, but then in the back of the room, when we were talking, as I own a plant, this other guy owns a plant, and here's a PVC guy that sells the PVC to both of us. That was the conversation I needed,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah,
got a nugget from that, and the same thing with the cutting guy and whatever. And so after that, I just said, "Hey guys," and we put a big email chain together. "Hey, shouldn't we be doing that more? Like
yeah,
this, shouldn't we be talking in the back of the room more?" And so, is there an association out there? No, there's not one. Well, I guess let's start one, right?
yeah.
Then COVID hit and everybing fell apart. And then
Yeah.
we actually got to reboot it in June of last year.
Good for you for
At
sticking
the
with it.
Yeah, so it took a while, but kind of rebooted it. Got a board of directors together. Fast forward to this year, we've had a couple member meetings. We've done really well. We're at 40 some odd member companies. I'm the president of the association, and we put out like one of the big first things was like a QC manual for all the
Nice.
plants to say, here's what we live,
Like a
here's what quality
standard.
control is, and here's what the standard should be, and here's the ways to define it. Here's how you talk to customers. Here's how you look at it internally to mitigate problems, and just things like that that were just like open share of ideas
Sure.
and agreed upon things was just wildly important. And I was just on a call actually before this one was with some of the board members for VRMA, and that was cited again as being like there's new plants launching all the time, and they were like, "Wow, this is huge. It would have taken us 2 years to get to what we
Sure.
read in 10 minutes."
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So just
that's
starting new companies, helping them out, and then existing companies.
yeah, that's got to be hugely valuable for anyone who's coming in new to this industry,
Right.
especially on the manufacturing side where there's so many moving parts. And honestly, that's one of the big things for me that I always harken back to when I get in these discussions, especially with people who have been collecting for a long time. Um, you know, Everyone, yourself included, going back to when you started this business, is relearning an entire craft, down
Right.
to the parts and the mechanics and the physics of how this works. And so many people are like, "Oh, why do new records have all these problems? Back when I used to buy them in the '70s." Like, well, all those people are no longer around, unfortunately, and
Right.
all of that equipment and that process and the
Yeah.
manuals and the expertise, it all went away in the late
Yeah.
'90s, early 2000s. All those people retired and went on to other careers. And so now, yeah, vinyls never truly went away. It's always been a thing, but everyone's having to reinvent the entire industry, other than maybe on the retail side has pretty much stayed the same. You get a record, you
That's
put it
right.
on the shelf and you sell it. But
That's right.
everything else underneath that, from manufacturing and distribution, and certainly when you get into artists and how they're recording and thinking about it being pressed to vinyl now is a totally different thing than versus just cutting it for radio or for digital, things like that. So it's always a fascinating discussion for me when I have to explain that to people. Like, yeah, it's not like the plants were just sitting around unused and then they cranked them back up.
Yeah.
That's
So
not how this works.
you touched a couple things. So the craft side of it can't be understated, right? So you're exactly right. So the it's like a language. It's like a lost language that gets lost in the middle of the forest or the middle of the jungle, and the jungle eats it.
Hmm.
So you had all these people move on. Thankfully, the mind share of some of the, literally 70-year-old guys and gals that are still, wanting to share has been wildly important. And then these last few years, really we kind of came in as this new wave. I remember the first conference a couple years before we started the thing. I think it was I guess it was the first year we launched. 2017 was the first making vinyl. I remember there was a couple of those legacy plants. Like when we launched, there was maybe 30 plants in the world. Okay.
Okay.
Fast forward to today, the number's right about 175 plants in the world.
Hundreds. And
So,
how many of those are
boom.
based in the States, like approximate?
Somebody quantified that. I believe maybe 60 to 70, something crazy,
Okay.
crazy
Still a
number.
bigger number than I would have guessed. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a map out there. So there's a Making Vinyl website. I think you have to be a member to be able to look at the map, but
Kind of
there's a
see it.
map that literally has every plant pinpointed on the planet, and it just keeps expanding. But
Sure.
um, now that said, what you have to remember at the plant level, you have enthusiasts that said maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, this sounds like a really great idea. Or maybe
Hmm.
there was somebody with some money that backed it and said, oh, I see that this is huge growth. I want to jump in financially.
Jump in on the
That is
boom.
just not how that works.
No,
It
it
takes
takes
literally
so
takes
long.
years to get it right. And I
Yeah.
can only say that because it was really hard for us to get it right.
And
Right.
through it. Yeah.
And it kicked our butt for literally the first couple years of just things that you don't know what you don't know. They say that in
Yeah.
business all the time. There's what you don't know. And so you might have great intentions, but and so a lot of these nascent plants are trying to come online, or they have come online, and they're trying to figure out all these things in this, again, a foreign language that got eaten by the jungle, and nobody's sharing any information with them. So
Yep.
the other side of the VRMA is, yeah, let's what's a boiler, and what's the best boiler? What kind of softener do you need to use? What kind of chemical to keep your the inside of your pipes not rotting and eating themselves, and you have a pipe burst above your press? There's so many mechanical breakdowns in the process on
Yeah.
just the plant level. Uh, who are the best folks out there making quality stampers that you're not then making it, and then they're destroyed after a couple hundred units versus 1,000 units, and then the
Sure.
cost goes up. And what is the best shrink wrap to use, and what's a
Sure.
shrink wrap tunnel? Who makes a shrink wrap tunnel? Yeah, but what kind of pallets should you be using? Where do you get the pallets? What kind of boxes? What size boxes? I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on.
I have no
And
fucking clue.
so just sharing that information and trying to help folks out, so that, because by the way, what you just said is at the end of it, the retailer, they got it. They're going to sell it for what it is.
Yeah.
Who made it? Nobody knows.
They don't know.
How is it made? Was it made by a massive super plant that pumped out 30,000 units that day? Or was it made by a mom and pop that literally made 500 records that day? That's it.
Sure. Yeah.
And was the quality better by the 500, or was it better from the guys that made 30,000, but then they happen to make 1,000 of them poorly?
Hmm.
And which one did you get?
Yeah. It's a hard business, man. I applaud you for you and your team for sticking through and keeping your heads down and putting out a quality product, man. It's
Thank you.
cannot be easy based on everything you're talking us through.
Yeah, but it's
Um,
fun, right? It is fun. You got to remember it's fun.
yeah, well, and that was one of the questions. I was like, what's the funnest part of your job? Like, what do you enjoy the most? Is it like seeing the finished product? Is it actually dropping it on your turntable? Like, I'm sure people would love to know, like, because you
Yeah,
see the
yeah. I
whole
think
process.
it's kind of new music discovery, right? I mean, I wish I got to
Sure.
listen to as many as we make, but I can't. But I find new artists every week that I'm like, I would never have heard of. I wouldn't have found them on
Sure.
Spotify or in Amazon
No.
Music or whatever. The algorithm was never going to feed them to me,
No.
and
Yeah.
it just happened. I mean, what's even crazier, the algorithm didn't feed them to me, but somehow randomly the one that I heard out on the floor, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I put it in the office. I go, wow, that was even better than I thought. It wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Yeah.
And so the weird chain of how music gets to all people is wild. But we're very lucky in that, or that we get to have it come to us,
Yeah.
for
No.
lack of
Absolutely,
a
man.
better term.
I mean, I can echo the statement. right back at you because again, being on the retail side, I get to see and hear so much new music because it comes through. It's totally different when it comes through and you're holding in your hands. You're like,
Yeah.
you kind of feel obligated. You're like, well, you guys are obligated. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and open one and listen to
Right.
it just because it's
Right.
like a lot of people pre-ordered this and it looks really interesting. And I've heard it's good, but I can
Yeah.
always stream it a little bit, but it's always more captivating, obviously, to have the physical thing in your hands, and it draws you in so much more, which is
Absolutely.
obviously one of the big benefits of this thing we're working in. Well, I really appreciate your time, man. I do have one bonus question, and I don't know if you
Yes.
saw at the end of my interview. So please debunk or correct the thought out there in regards to black versus colored vinyl. Tell everybody
Yes.
once and for all, what
Yes.
is the reality of it in regards to sound quality of black vinyl versus any other color? And you can explain how black's a color too.
Okay, no problem. So let's we'll take it from the best way I had explained to me by a compounder. So a compounder is the people that actually make PVC. PVC is polyvinyl chloride, and they use all these agents inside of it to make it smoother or sound where there's not surface noise.
Okay, of
And so wax is one of those, right? And that's why used to hear stacks of wax, right?
course.
Now a black record is actually tinted black. The real color is like a milky natural. So the
Yep.
purest sound, if you're the purest sound, is a milky natural. Then everything you add, any color, including black,
Anything else?
and much less a translucent, but even on the opaque world, is going to be some kind of additive. So the
Hmm.
way he explained it, he said, think about how car paint has gotten better in the last 10 years, right?
Sure.
It's just better. And it's the way that they can just take down the paint and crush it, crush it, crush it, crush it. So it's so small that it's literally it's sprayed on better by those car manufacturers.
Hmm.
So they've taken the same elements in what they do in the compounding side, and they're able to basically crush down those compounds so much that instead of looking down through a microscope and it looks like you're going over grains of sand because you bought a red translucent record, it's a
Hmm.
smooth valley, right? And
Okay.
so black, natural, trans red, trans blue, any kind of combination in between, they've been able to now on a micro level basically get it so fine that it's no longer a sand, it's just that smooth valley. And so that is where all surface noise lives, is in that compound, and because of those colors. So the debunking would live like this. If you bought a record that was made 5 years ago and it's on the shelf for 5 records, is it possible
For five
that
years,
you
yeah.
bought from a compound that was made before they were able to go crush, 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 crush,
Before the
crush?
technology was good
Yes.
enough to
Yes.
figure it out,
Well,
essentially.
so maybe the technology was there, but were the compounders selling enough compound to justify buying the thing that could crush, crush, crush? I'm going to make this
Mm,
so right, so that it's so fine that it's now like this versus crunchy, crunchy, right? So
interesting.
now there's enough volume that they can pay to buy the thing that makes it go crush, 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 that we can then use, and it makes it go smooth, smooth, smooth,
Regardless if it's black, purple,
regardless.
green, brown, it's the
Yes.
same
And
thing.
so then the other one is like older generations.
Yeah.
Everybody's, oh man, I love the warmth of it, where it does pops and ticks and crunchiness. It's actually shouldn't hear anything. You should
Yeah.
drop a needle and there's no sound, and then the music starts, and you go, oh.
Ideally,
So
yeah.
that is ideally what we try to do. Now, that is a compound itself. You have to remember that it is totally possible that the lacquer, which is the first step, right?
Mhm.
The lacquer had issues. So sometimes there is surface noise, and regardless of the compound, the crunch, 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 smooth, 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 didn't even matter because it was on the lacquer. The
So the
lacquer didn't.
quality control at the lacquer plant is as much or even more important because that's what you guys are pressing
That's
everything
it.
off of.
That's it. You got it.
It's
And
hugely
then the
important.
stamper bath, the bath that the stampers, the mothers made and the stampers pulled from,
Yeah.
that bath has to be super clean, or you could get debris and residue that's on a stamper that may not have been on the lacquer. So it all goes back in the chain, back to the 140 touches
100 people,
at the
yeah, yeah.
very beginning. Is the lacquer so perfect and smooth that it doesn't have any surface noise? Check mark. Now they put it in these baths, literally electrodes, and
Mhm.
nickel is going up and attracting itself through electricity. And it's this whole crazy process. They rip it off by hand. They put a pair of pliers and go rip off. Did they damage it or dink it?
In
Maybe they
that little
didn't.
process. Yeah.
Then they put it into a sleeve and ship it across the country. Did something happen? We don't know.
Yeah.
Then it gets to the plant level. Then we blindly look at it and go like, it looks like it should sound good.
Sure.
It looks like it should sound good. Think about that, right?
Yeah. That's never a good thing to go off
Then we
of.
make it on a test press on black and it ships off to the customer. And they go, we really like it. Now you got to remember another thing, the stamper doesn't seed in, meaning it's not the press. Like basically you need to make about 50 copies on a stamper before it's like kind of crushed into the press and everything seeds in perfectly and it
Warms
sounds
up to
really
it.
good.
Okay.
Right. And then all the craftsmanship of, was the compound clean? Was the compound not clean? Did it have some dirt in it? Did they leave the bin open? Some dust came into it, right? And now we have to get into temperatures and all these things at the plant level where we know what we're doing to melt the plastic so it's evenly distributed across that stamper to not make surface noise, which would then be our actual problem.
Once again,
was that a lot? Was that a lot?
no, it was great. It was complex enough to where I think when people watch this, and I'm probably going to segment out this little portion as another video just because I'm so tired of seeing it. But it was complex enough to where I think people will go, man, holy crap, I never thought about all that.
Yeah.
You know,
so just put it on the screen like with big bold letters like they do on YouTube, these crazy videos for kids. And here's why records sound good, sound no good, you know, whatever.
Yep. It's not easy, just like the rest of your process.
Yeah. But you know, it is fun, and that's what's fun about the challenge. Not just, you know, our technicians. It's a tough thing for them to do every day. But I think I'm, you know, talking to them all the time, and I used to actually run the press for a long time too, alongside them, not as much as they did, just every once in a while when I could. It's difficult, but that challenge, you only do one or two things with a challenge as a human, right? Either run away from it or you run to it.
Sure.
So they really enjoy that part and getting into the fine details, making sure that it's perfect. And, you know, hopefully that thought process is what, you know, is bred into you know, a company. And then hopefully as the association continues to grow, more folks continue to really care. And so that it justifies that $35. I mean,
yeah,
we want it to grow. I mean, that's why we're in it. That's why we're spending so much time and energy.
Same.
And I personally don't want to buy one off the shelf and have it that I didn't make and have to put it on and go, oh my God.
Yeah.
Got to return it or
complain.
Or,
yeah, and that's the thing is like, I hope people understand that not everybody, but I'm sure there's a huge portion of your employee base as well as other plants. They're all record collectors too.
Yes, they're all musicians.
They're all
musicians.
All playing
bands with each other out on the floor. It's crazy.
They're doing this all because of the labor of love component. And so it's not like there's some big bad guy going, oh, we're going to produce crap to screw the consumer. Like everyone wants to produce quality. It just comes down to there's a lot of steps and there's a lot of things that can go wrong because it is truly a craft, like you've mentioned so many times. And that's why it's a beautiful thing. And that's why that's why you get so much enjoyment out of versus just click and play, you know?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, cool, man. I really appreciate the conversation. I will definitely stay in touch and keep tabs on Hand Drawn and you know, give you guys all the business I can from our perspective. But thanks for enlightening everyone on the current state of the industry, and we'll touch base soon.
Hey, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dustin. We'll talk soon.
All right, bye.